Welcome back, everybody, to the Super Centex Friday Night Lights Waco Trip podcast with Brice Cherry and Chad Conine. I kind of feel like that. You ever watch The Big Bang Theory, Brice?
Occasionally.
On that show, Sheldon Cooper has Sheldon Cooper's Fun with Flags, in which he talks about different flags from different countries, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like that sometimes when I'm introducing the podcast.
Does Fun with Flags have any listeners?
Well, that's kind of the joke on the show, is that it doesn't really have any viewers. It's like a video. It's like a YouTube thing or whatever.
And we may be sitting here talking to ourselves anyway, so who knows?
I mean, I've had a little bit of feedback on the podcast. So
oh, I have to. Yeah. So we thank y'all for listening. Let's get into it.
Okay, my first question this week, and I'll not preface this with anything, just so you can figure out where I'm going with it. We'll get there in a minute. But does a game need to have meaningful context to you for it to be a great game?
No, you can have a great game between two terrible teams. I mean, I feel like context helps. If there's something to play for, that certainly adds more significance to the matchup, and certainly probably leads to more fans in the stands. It typically means better teams are playing, so the quality of play may be better. But can two bad teams produce a great game? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with you.
Okay.
But as long as guys are competitive and they get out there and they want to beat each other, then you could have a great game. I can see that. For me, as a sports writer, I always want context. I always want the motivation, the why, you know.
I get it. I feel like that's two different things. I feel like you're talking about the story of the game and not just the game. I mean, like I said, you could take, you know, and there was a few years ago when the Browns, remember before Baker Mayfield got there, when they were like 0-16, 1-15, and didn't they knock somebody off? I'm trying to, obviously I don't remember the game, but like their one win that year, it was they knocked somebody off, and it was a great game, and it like came down to the wire, and they put together, you know, one great game all year, and you know, so yeah, you can have a bad team put together a great game, and you can have two bad teams put together a great game.
Well, you know, I just think that a recipe for a great game here in Central Texas means that I'm showing up to cover
it. Well.
And I don't show up to cover it unless there's at least some context.
You know, we usually talk about food on here. Maybe we should talk about a little slice of humble pie.
So that's a big lead into where I'm going with this, because, you know, Friday night at waco-isd Stadium, there'll be two different radio crews there. We'll have a reporter there. I'm sure the TV stations will go by and get some obligatory highlights, if there are any, for the Waco High versus Midway clash. One of those teams is going to walk away with their first win of the year. So, yeah, I mean, neither one are going to the playoffs. They may both be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs at this point. Although that's probably not true with four teams.
I don't think it is. I know when I talked to Shane Anderson prior to this past week's game against Mansfield, he mentioned, you know, we still have a chance to go out and win 3 out of 5 and make the playoffs. So the fact that they did not win one last week means they still have a chance to win, I guess, 3 out of 4 and make the playoffs. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let those hypotheticals play themselves out. what I wanted to do just for fun and, because we love both these teams. They're local teams. They've been great in the past at different times and to some extent at the same time every now and then. So, and the FCA game did this a couple of years ago where they took a Madden, like sort of, what do you call that? Not a replication, but a
virtual game.
Yeah, a virtual game. So let's say we're going to play Waco High Midway with their current rosters, but we each get to pick 3 players, right? You pick 3 Waco High players, and I'll pick 3 Midway players. How does that sound?
I like it, and I feel like all my guys are going to be 99 on Madden. As you said, both of them have some good football traditions. They've had some great teams. Midway is not even that far removed from a state championship berth when you think about it.
Right.
These things are cyclical, and I feel like at some point both will be back. I feel like it's maybe a steeper climb for Waco High, but I also think they may benefit from a probably soon move to Class 5A. So
right.
That'll benefit the Lions. I'm picking Waco High, correct?
Yeah. I didn't know if you're vamping, as you try to think of 3 good guys.
No. I've got them written down, and I even wrote down 3 Midway guys. But I'll stick with Waco High.
Well, we can do each.
All right, I'll do that. I could have gone all Johnson on Waco High. I went 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start with Booty Johnson. I'm going way back to the Waco High Tigers. And I believe it was John Booty Johnson, one of the stars of those Paul Tyson-led teams that won multiple state titles. He had a 330-yard rushing game one night. I mean, he was legit in those days. I mean, it's hard to compare eras. That was long before our time. But so Booty Johnson would be one, just kind of as a nod to the old Tigers. Lewis Fight would be another one. He was a running back for Johnny Tusa in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. And when you talk to Coach Tusa about some of the great players he has, whenever he has talked about Lewis Fight, it was in very reverential tones. He was incredible in high school, had a season where he rushed for 2,300 yards or something, and went on and had a decent, I think, college career. I want to say maybe like Texas A&I, something like that. And I remember John Werner talking about he did make a play in college that was like essentially the equivalent of the Sports Center play of the day or something.
Yeah, he flipped into the end zone. He went up, got clipped on his lower half, did a flip, and I think he landed it in the end zone.
Super
athletic.
I
remember when he was in high school, he had, created a buzz all around town because he was a little bit, he was probably in high school when I was in middle school, but he's one of those guys that you heard about all over town. Okay, so third guy,
going back to the Johnson, Derek Johnson, who, they have a game named after him now. Obviously, he was a beast, a defensive beast at Waco High, and you got to have at least one defender on there. Johnny Tusa always used to put many of his best players on defense, and that worked out pretty well for them. Of course, DJ had memorably a 30-31 tackle game. There's different reports on that, but at least 30 tackles against John Tyler. Incredible, and went on to greatness in the NFL as well. Yeah,
well, you took one of my answers, but I'll tack on a couple more. Jared Salubi.
Mm-hmm.
He had the 99-yard run in the state championship game.
Yep.
And Victor Johnson.
He was a DB who ended up going to Oklahoma State, correct?
Right.
Yeah, he was a great player. I remember covering him, watching him play, and then another Johnson who we ought to at least just throw in
on
there.
those same teams that played at Baylor. I know what direction you're going.
Well, maybe not, because I think you're thinking I was going to say Dwight.
Okay, no, okay.
I was going to say Robert Johnson. He was a quarterback in the early 2000s, and he was very athletic. Went on to Arkansas. Didn't have the kind of college career I think he wanted, but man, he played one of the best games I've ever seen in a triple overtime win over A&M Consolidated one night. So he was fun to watch in high school.
Okay, so I'm going to pick Midway guys first, since you get to go Waco High guys first, and then you can give your Midway guys. I'll go chronologically, and I'm going to start with a guy who was a senior when I was a freshman, named David Maxwell.
Okay.
Who was the 4A Defensive Player of the Year in 1995, and also, little known fact, key member of the First Baptist Woodway City Championship basketball team that I also played on.
So he has a special place in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. He went on to play at Texas A&M. He was a linebacker in high school, and he played D-line in college. My second guy chronologically is John Hubert, who went on to Kansas State, but helped them make a great run under Kent Bechtel, and had a couple of. I mean, he was a dynamic guy. He was, he'd get in the open and look out, he was gone, right?
Right.
And of course, guy number 3, you can't leave out, if the way his season is going, you can't leave out Tanner Mordecai.
So the last two you mentioned, I had on my list, Hubert and Mordecai. I went all 21st century on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I think Midway's better runs seemingly have been since the turn of the century. They did make the state semifinals in 99?
I believe maybe 99 and 97.
Okay.
Oddly enough.
Yeah. I mean, so it's
98.
Not
97, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, it's not like they haven't had some great teams, but yes, I did have Mordecai and Hubert on my list as well. The other one I would throw in there, I want to say he ended up being a 4 or 5 star recruit, was Ahmad Dixon, who was incredible at Midway, had a great career there, and went on to a pretty good career for Baylor. Hard hitting, just seemed like a nose for the ball kind of guy on defense. And then one I think we've got to mention, even though I didn't have him on my list, but I'm not sure he was the only Midway guy on our all-time Super Centex team, but I do remember him being on the all-time Super Centex team. And do you know who I'm talking about?
That was the 50th anniversary team you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, now, so you put me on the spot.
Hey, I'll just put it like this: every team needs a guy who could flip the field, right?
Oh, a puncher. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't call his name.
Andy Hawkins.
Oh, okay. That wasn't who I was thinking of.
That would have been like maybe the late 70s or early 80s. Obviously, Andy Hawkins was a great multi-sport athlete because he went on to become pretty good baseball pitcher in the major leagues, had a no-hitter, and has been a pitching coach for a long time and stuff. Was with the Rangers for a while, but he apparently was an incredible punter back in his day, and I think had scholarships that he could have taken, but chose the baseball route.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to go ahead and make all of Central Texas mad right now and just be that Midway guy. But nobody in Central Texas can beat Midway's all-time pitching staff.
Oh, that's a fair statement. Because
you got Andy Hawkins, you got Brian Barkley, Casey Fossum, and Zach Duke, all 4 of which pitched in the majors.
Yeah, and even just mentioning those guys, you're still leaving off some pretty good midway pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know,
mm-hmm.
obviously, yeah, they've produced some great baseball talent for no question.
Another guy, Coach Lane's son, was it Brian Lane? Did he pitch in the majors? Anyway,
I don't know.
That's the thing about an improvisational podcast. Sometimes you back yourself into a corner, and something and everybody in town realizes you can't remember everything all the time. You know. All right, let's shift gears. Last season, you know, when we're coming up on a week where there's not a whole lot that looks like, oh wow, can't wait for this game type of thing, you know, and that kind of stuff ebbs and flows like everything else in life. But you know, maybe there's some teams playing out there this week that we don't have them, you know, written down as 3 or 4 rounds in the playoffs. But I tell you, China Spring about this time last year, lost at Salado in a good game. They lost against Connally in a good game. But they go into the playoffs with a couple of district losses. I think I think they were the third place team, and they got to play Jasper in the first round. And it, you know, that they got look like they got the short end of the stick on that one. And then they go to the regional final, you know, and play Carthage just about as good a game as anybody played them in the playoffs last year. So what I want to know is, who is this year's China Spring, a team that's maybe had their bumps so far this year, but might make the run when it really counts?
To me, the team that comes to mind is la-vega. Obviously, the Pirates are coming off, I would say, maybe a humbling loss to Stephenville. They had a loss to Argyle earlier this year. But you're talking about, you know, the number 1 and number 3 ranked teams in the state. They could still suffer potentially another loss. I mean, they go to Brownwood this week. But I think in 2 weeks is when they get Midlothian Heritage, another state ranked team that they'll face. That said, you know, if la-vega goes in the playoffs with a couple of district losses, who's to say they couldn't, you know, put it all together? I feel like they're one of those teams that is capable on when they put it all together of beating just about anyone in the state.
Right.
You know, and then against an overmatched opponent, they're probably going to wallop them. So, you know, it would probably come down to matchups and everything. But, you know, China Spring went out last year, and I feel like they built confidence knowing they were coming out of a tough district. You know, they were battle tested, and la-vega will come out of this district, whatever their record is, knowing that, hey, we can play with these teams. You know, we just have to play well. Is this a vintage la-vega team that we've seen maybe in recent years? Probably not. You know, I think obviously they had some pretty good guys in some of these other teams, you know, including at quarterback. You know, had Willie's son there for a while, and he did a great job. And you know, I'm not sure this la-vega team has all that many weapons that you know, some of these state teams that la-vega had, you know, but that's my answer. I mean, I feel like they could go in with 2 or 3 losses and still make a run.
My answer is kind of similar to that. The Cameron-yoe yeoman, you know, just kind of the exact same mold, one of the state powers. You got Rick Rhodes back there as their head coach again, and they lost their first 4 games against good competition. Then they just romped through the first 2 weeks of district. And then they had a setback last week against Academy, which Academy is a little bit out of our area. I think at one time we considered them an area team, and we don't sell papers there anymore. Don't sell as many papers, but they're going to be an interesting one to watch in the playoffs because they've won some like legit games so far this year. They beat Cameron last week, but Cameron, you know, if they're a third place team out of that district with Lorena and Academy, I don't want to be somebody playing them.
No,
I don't want to be a second place team playing them,
Right. Yeah, to me, this is where a tough district pays off. Because, back in the day when maybe one or two teams got into the playoffs, then, being in a tough district was not always your friend, because if you finish third, you're not going anywhere except basketball season.
Right.
But nowadays, getting in as the third or fourth place team out of a really rugged district, all it does is mean that, you've seen tough competition, so you're not going to be fazed by, what you might see in the playoffs. Doesn't mean you're going to, go all the way to state, but we have seen teams in the UIL playoffs before that have, 4, even 5 losses that make deep runs, into December.
It's true. It's rare, but it happens.
It does.
Okay, so I mentioned China Spring, their run last year. This week, I'm going to cover China Spring at Gatesville, which we all know what that means when you're going to a game at Gatesville. For the uninitiated out there, the Gatesville folks really roll out the red carpet when it comes to the press box food. I don't know if they do it for the media or they just do it for their own enjoyment, but they'll have, sometimes you'll go to a place and they'll have fried chicken in the press box. So they'll have pizza and it's like, okay, thank you. I appreciate
barbecue.
That. Or a sandwich.
You see barbecue, yeah.
Last year I went to a game. I covered the Mount Vernon West game up in Rockwall, and they had Babe's chicken. They had boxes. That was good stuff.
Yes.
But it ain't nothing like Gatesville.
No.
Where you got barbecue and you got pizza and you got fried chicken, you got kolaches, you got hoagies, and you probably got some sort of chips and dip. And then that's just the main course. Then they got dessert, homemade desserts and chocolate cake and brownies and cookies. And then as if that's not enough, sometimes they'll come up in the middle of the first quarter with hot donuts.
Hot donuts. You're right.
Yeah.
Not just donuts, but they're like heated. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You got to save room for the hot donuts. It's incredible.
I've been on a real good nutrition routine for the past 3 or 4 months. And I'm going to Las Vegas this weekend. So I'm starting the weekend off in Gatesville, then going to a wedding reception on Saturday night, and then Las Vegas. I may just gain it all back. I lost 12 pounds in the last 4 months, and I may just gain it all back in 4 days.
You've been prepping for this weekend. That's what you've been doing. It was all for this weekend. Go crazy. Go crazy.
But so that leads me to there's actually a question here. What is your perfect pregame meal?
I mean, other than Gatesville, is that the answer?
Well, I mean, like, I don't know, like in the Harry Potter books, right? Sometimes when they sit down at a banquet, they just think of what they want to eat and it appears on their plate. So let's say, you're at the Harry Potter Hogwarts press box and whatever you want just appears there. What are you having?
I think it's hard to top really good barbecue. There's just something about, smoked meat that goes well with watching some pigskin, I mean, if you have really good barbecue, I think that is a good way to go. But I mean, I just can't really get past Gatesville. I mean, just the selection that you have, as you said, it's not even just it's the variety of options for one, and the fact that you do have dessert as well. And I would even go as far to say the hospitality of the people. You mentioned, maybe it's kind of for them too. I think it is, but at the same time, you will not really find a much warmer, more hospitable press box climate. And I know many a sports writer has talked about, after deadline, they're fine with just letting you sit up there and work and, hey, just take all the time you need, That we don't find that environment everywhere. Let's just be honest. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. Leo Buckley Stadium, which is another one down in Killeen, usually has a pretty good spread, as I recall. Another one with a variety of options, including maybe a couple of different kinds of pizza. One thing I love that they do at Gatesville is this is how they get all that food, is they get on there on the PA and they start thanking every sponsor that provided all this food and, you know, give them a little special shout out, and that keeps the food flowing.
Yep. Incidentally, mine would be Chicago style pizza.
Hard to beat. I am a big Chicago style pizza fan. I'm just not sure, you know, when we're at a football game like that, we are working, and that's pretty heavy. You know, that's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, whereas barbecue is just, you know, light and crisp.
It's like a salad.
It probably is to you and Werner. I've never seen guys that can put away calories like the two of you.
Yeah, well, it shows.
All right. Well, that's another week of high school football podcast. Next week, we're going to be wall-to-wall games because we got some games next week.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. All right.
Yep, cool.
See ya.
See ya.